Hello everybody and welcome to another instalment in our series of Green Room Conversations, and delighted to be joined for this conversation today by composer David Matthews. David, welcome.
Thank you.
I wanted to just ask you to think back to where it began for you. I suppose not many people sort of spend time at school thinking composer is going to be the career path for me, but I guess through the course of these conversations, everyone I've spoken to, there's a kind of light bulb moment for everyone where they think this is going to be the future, this is going to be my life's work and my path. What was that moment for you?
Well, it happened when I was 16, and I hadn't composed until then. I learned the piano when I was young, but I never really wanted to compose until I lost interest in classical music, actually, because I was interested in, when I was 13, I got interested in rock and roll, the early period of rock and roll with Elvis Presley and so on. But then when I was 16, I got interested in classical music again and started listening to it on the radio. And then for Christmas that year, I was given a recording of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony with Bruno Walter. As soon as I started listening to it, I thought, I'm going to write a symphony. This is absolutely wonderful. It could be the greatest thing I could do. And so I started to teach myself how to write orchestral music. I didn't have any help because there hadn't been any music at our school at all. The headmaster was rather opposed to it. And so, and there's no one I could ask really about it because we didn't really know any musicians who would help in our family. We were just a sort of rather ordinary family in East London. And so I just learned through scores how to write orchestral music, and it took me a year to write this symphony. It was very long. It doesn't exist anymore because in a fit of Brahmsian purgatory, I destroyed all my early works. I wrote a second symphony when I was 18, and I've still got that. It's very Mahlerian because that year, 1960, when I started composing, was the Mahler centenary, and I heard all the Mahler symphonies, and I got very interested in those. And it took me a very long time to get anything played. I should mention also my brother Colin, who's also a composer, and we always did everything together. So as soon as I started composing, he started too.
But you were first?
I was first, yes. Only a couple of weeks, but I was first. And without Colin, I probably couldn't have got anywhere because we taught each other. We were extremely useful. As I say, we didn't know anybody else who would help us, so we taught each other. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I got anything played at all. But meanwhile, I'd been to university. I couldn't study music because I didn't have the O-levels or the A-levels. I read classics, in fact. But when I left university, I asked Derek Cook, whom Colin and I had got to know because of the Mahler 10th Symphony. I wrote to him about it, and we went to see him and we became friends. And later on, we helped with the reorchestration of that. And Derek introduced me to Donald Mitchell, who just founded Faber Music. And I started working as a freelance for Faber Music. And I was introduced to Britten, who needed some extra help. And then I became Britten's assistant. Without any qualifications at all, I became Britten's assistant for 4 years. And I didn't know that Britten was the kind of person who would throw anybody who wasn't any good out quite quickly.
Yeah.
So I can't have made many mistakes. Otherwise, I would have lost my job. But that was wonderful, to be apprenticed to the greatest composer.
And it's a career path that now seems incredible to have just sort of found your way through self-teaching and
no one could
working with Colin, but
no one nowadays could possibly have that career. There are so many more composers, and they're all fighting to get their music played.
And that relationship with Britten, what did that give you?
Well, it just showed me, how a composer worked, and of course it was the best possible example because Britten was the perfect musician. I mean, he did everything absolutely professionally. And we didn't really talk very much about music because he didn't really want to talk. He certainly didn't want to talk about his music, and he wasn't really interested in what I was doing. But I didn't actually. I didn't think he would like my music, so I didn't show it to him. I should have done, really. I was rather crazy, but there we are. But I did learn a huge amount.
And sure, just from being
there,
being party to the process, and someone who I think worked quite sort of rigid hours.
Yes, he
and
did.
followed a very sort of set.
Yes, that's right. Oh, yes, he worked.
with
He
that.
worked every morning at 9 o'clock, and he used to come and see me at about 11 for when he'd have a coffee break and see how I was getting on in my little office.
Did you ever go
I was copying out scores for him and doing editorial jobs and all sorts of
and
things.
ever out into the North Sea with for a morning dip with him? That was part
No,
of his
I didn't
routine.
do that. I didn't do that. No.
Just let's spend a moment thinking about the way that you write and your own musical language. And I think maybe for some people, the idea of contemporary music, modern music, is something that's perhaps quite intimidating. And they've
Yes.
perhaps heard some composers that that we know and love from this century and last, and find that difficult to get on board with. The music that you write, and I think perhaps increasingly so, is not from that kind of uncompromising, quite complicated and almost exclusory sound world. It's music which is instantly, people can instantly attach themselves to it, I think, because they recognise sounds of nature and things like that in it. Certainly the work that I was listening to this afternoon, Le Lac, is a work that people can instantly engage with very, very positively. Is that something that's happened consciously for you? Does it happen in reaction to the music that you hear around you, or is it's just something that's happened naturally over time?
Well, when I was young, I heard all the music that was going on, Boulez and Stockhausen and so on. I just felt this is not the sort of thing for me. I was very taken with both Britten's and Tippett's music, especially Tippett actually, and I thought that Tippett had reinvented tonality in a way in his music, and I wanted to carry on writing music which was essentially tonal, although it wasn't so tonal as it is now when I started, because I was influenced by Berg in particular, and Bartók and Schoenberg to a little extent. But gradually I've become, and of course it was actually so unfashionable to write the kind of music that I felt I wanted to write then, that I was a bit afraid of writing it in a way. But I've got more confident now because things have changed and many people write tonal music now. And I think it is possible to revive it. It must be done in obviously a way that's not just imitative of the past. And I hope I do that. I don't know. It's hard to judge one's own music, really. I just really write as I want to, without, I think now, any inhibitions.
And a final question, if I can, what's left for you? You've spent a lot of time working in conventional formats, in string quartets and symphonies. You obviously see still a lot of creative impulse to be taken from those very standard forms. Do you see the remainder of your compositional life staying within those forms, or do you find yourself sort of looking for different formats, different sound worlds, perhaps even? Or
Well, it's possible. I don't like to repeat myself too much. I mean, for example, I've written 10 symphonies, and they're all very different. I didn't want to ever repeat they're all very different in shape, for a start, and I didn't want to repeat what I'd already done. The same with string quartets. I've written now 16 string quartets, and they're all different too. So I'll go on trying to find something different. It probably won't be too far away from what I do now. I mean, who knows? I think it's difficult when you get older. You feel sometimes I've done enough, but at the moment I don't feel I've done enough, so I will carry on.
Good.
Certainly.
Really pleased to hear it. Looking forward to hearing the 10th Symphony in due course, and more works to come, I hope.
Thank you. Well, I hope so. I mean, I think the Ulster Orchestra is a wonderful orchestra, and it's very, it was terrific this afternoon hearing them rehearse my piece so well.
Great. Pleased to hear it. David, thank you ever so much.
Thank you.